Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us online tonight. I just want to start by saying that the Engineering, Diversity, and Inclusion Council supports Dr. Morgan and her family in the wake of the events that took place on August 22nd. This incident, along with the countless others that occur on our very own campus, shows that we still have a very long way to go. It would be naive to think that our university doesn't need to be open to more ideas that will help us reshape the culture and institutional structures of our SCU community. While it is never meant to stand in place of more definitive action from the university, these panels feature guests, STEM, and community leaders who can help us find the ideas we need to finally make it right.
This includes informing people who want to learn more about understanding their privilege and how to leverage it in allyship, as well as turning our understanding into actionable steps. Just some background, for example, in episode 1 of our panel, Dr. Mabry delved into what it means to understand your privilege, how to be an ally, and what cultural competency looks like in universities. In our second panel, in episode 2, Seidel Lee Curry reminded us the importance of mental health, empathy, and safe spaces on university campuses, and taught us the difference between being an ally and an accomplice. And then lastly, in episode 3, our guest Fazila Siddiqui discussed what it was like growing up with a dual identity and the difference between reproductive rights and reproductive justice and COVID's impact on social and racial justice.
So we'll start by introducing ourselves. My name is Daniel Mendoza, and I'm an incoming senior from Thousand Oaks, California. I'm studying electrical engineering with a minor in sustainability, and I'm one of the 2 co-presidents of SHIP, the Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers.
Shout out SHIP. You guys should follow them on Instagram at @SHIP_SCU. And my name is Darren Brown, and I'm a rising junior from Henderson, Nevada. I'm studying bioengineering at Santa Clara, and I'm involved with the National Society of Black Engineers, also known as NSBE. A few house rules. For our Santa Clara students watching live on Zoom, please keep your microphone and video off, but the chat room is open, and we invite you to use it if you have any questions throughout our event.
For everyone watching our live stream across the world, there's a Google form on the webpage for you to submit any questions throughout the event as well. You can find it on the top of Darren's little header there. You can find it there. Once she comes on screen, you'll be able to see it and you'll be able to post to it. All right.
Okay, I'm posting this in the chat room right now, but here is did that post? Okay, that's our schedule. So thank you, Danny. Just to emphasize, please feel free to throw any questions that you may have in the chat, and we'll get to as many as we can during this part of the panel. And now it's time to introduce our panelists.
So we're honored to have 4 panelists with us for our panel today, who are all from across the country to bring various points of view on the issues at hand. Panelists, as we say your name, it would be great if you could also take about a minute to tell the audience a little bit more about who you are. And we'll start with Melissa Marquez.
Hi, everyone. My name is Melissa Cristina Marquez. I'm actually in Australia, so it's my tomorrow. But I am from Puerto Rico and Mexico. I am a shark scientist and science communicator, as well as a podcast host, TV host, and author as well. So I'm kind of at the forefront of talking about not only ocean injustices, but also racial injustices that come in regards to our blue planet.
Thank you, Melissa.
Up next, we have Grant Liffmann.
Hey everyone, sorry for the lighting. I'm apparently really bad at this. Thanks. I'm really excited to be here. I'm Grant Liffmann. I'm a TV host for NBC Sports Bay Area. I cover the Golden State Warriors as well as the San Francisco 49ers and San Francisco Giants and a lot of the Bay Area teams. I have some shows that I do that really tries to bring in a different type of energy and a different type of conversation into sports. And one thing that I feel very passionate about is definitely the sports impact on what they can do for actual change in terms of racial injustices, and definitely want to have my voice be heard as well. I've been, I'm lucky to have this platform, and I'm very happy to be here to share my thoughts.
Thank you, Grant.
And up next, we have Paulina Castrellon.
Hi, everyone. My name is Paulina Castrellon. I'm an environmental health and safety engineer / industrial hygienist. I work for Lockheed Martin as an environmental health safety senior engineer. I'm a full-time advocate for feminist and Latina engineers. In all engineering STEM community, I've always been the youngest and the only Latina, so I'm constantly advocating for people of color and as Latina herself in the STEM community. So once again, I'm happy and thank you for having me here today.
We're honored to have you, Paulina. Thank you.
And lastly, we have Chris Chapman.
Hey, greetings, everybody. Chris Chapman. I'm the president and CEO of Kingmakers of Oakland. Kingmakers of Oakland was created to improve educational outcomes of Black boys from preschool through 12th grade by really engaging our students, who we refer to as Kings, to redesign the systems, the structures, the conditions, and culture that perpetuate the school-to-prison pipeline. So we really are, equity ambassadors, equity leaders, but at the forefront, our children really are help curating what we hope to be a new redesign of public schools across this country. Thank you for allowing me to be here today.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, awesome. Now let's get into it. Again, these questions are really for everyone, but panelists, don't feel obligated to respond to each one, but feel free to jump in if you're interested in answering any question that comes. So to start off, I'm just gonna ask, how have you seen a lack of diversity and or inequality affect you or your community?
Well, I could go ahead and start. As a shark scientist, I actually did a TEDx talk about this, where you don't really see women shark scientists in the media, let alone Latina women shark scientists in the media. So I grew up thinking, okay, can I do this? Is this even possible? And it turns out there is actually quite a lot of women scientists, especially women shark scientists that are diverse, have numerous backgrounds and whatnot. But I think this lack of representation is quite important, because we're almost in a way shunning people from the idea of this being a viable career option. So I'm a big proponent that representation matters, because it's the quote, you can't be what you can't see. So unless you can kind of see yourself in a lineup of whatever industry you're interested in, you're not really going to think that you belong there. And I think that's a really big problem, and we're shunning away some brilliant minds from helping us tackle some really big problems that we can use more collaboration on.
Yeah, I can jump in as well if it's just kind of a get in as you fit in, and appreciate what Melissa just shared in the spirit of, I'm a product of public schools, born and raised in the Bay Area. But it wasn't until I went to community college, Casa San Mateo, where I had my first African-American male instructor. And in that spirit of, children are who they see, and not being able to have an African-American male teacher or female teacher for that matter in a public school education really was difficult, because folks who weren't from my community or understood my culture many times misinterpreted my genius and my expression and problematized it or kind of demonized it. And so for me, the big lift right now, and one of the strategies to address this toxic ecosystem we call the public school system, is creating pipelines of teachers of color, in particular, Black, Brown, PI, and API teachers of color. So all children benefit from having a teacher of color, but to ensure that our children are being taught by teachers that understand their language, their culture, and their beauty. And so I think it's very important that public school systems have to ensure that we have opportunities for leadership, not just in the classroom, but also, content experts leading the fiscal services and the operational services. And so I would share, for me, that's the opportunity we all have now, is to increase opportunities for people of color to lead in public school systems across this country.
Paulina, you can go if you'd like.
Yeah. I just want to kind of chime in very quickly here, to tag on from Melissa and Chris. As a female Latina in STEM myself, going into environmental occupational health safety engineering, I didn't have a single female professor. I didn't have a single Latino or person of color professor. I actually attended Cal State University Northridge here in Southern California, born and raised in Los Angeles. And I actually took Chicano studies and incorporated it with STEM and engineering so I can focus on environmental racism and help from an environmental engineering aspect in my community. Now as an adult and going into the field with 5-6 years of experience, I'm trying to bring that back into our education. I keep emphasizing consistently, and this is something I talk about on my social media and even at my current company at Lockheed Martin, how can we bring people of color into STEM? How can we bring them into our education system? Because as we all know, and as we all said, representation matters. As a young girl who grew up in Paulina, California, which is a very neighborhood, which is a lot of Hispanics, Latinos, and the first in my family to graduate high school and to go to college, it was a big freaking deal. So we need to have more people of, representation. We need to encourage the youth that whatever they want to do, they can do it, but we all need to work together. So I loved everything that you guys said. Thank you.
It's interesting listening to all of you because obviously it's fascinating to me because I get to learn, and that's something that's most important. And for me, I come from a different perspective. Obviously, I'm a white Caucasian, male, and if you look at it, we talk about what's happening it's been happening in society for as long as we know, but it's just. I come from a place, my demographic is the one that's privileged the most throughout especially American history. And being in the industry I am, and in sports and in sports media, there's been absolute systemic racism, and there's just the biases, and there's a need for diversity and for change within our industry. And it's just reflection on, our culture and our society in general, because how much of our American culture, obsesses about sports in general. So you they bleed into each other. But the point is that my main sport that I cover is basketball, which is predominantly played by Black men. And I'm a white man talking about it. And I was lucky enough to get a show in which myself and another white man talk about a sport in which, that again is 80% Black. And it's been an issue that's gone on. And while I would like to say I'm not part of the problem, I hope I want to contribute in a way that actually helps bring an actual, spotlight to the situation, and actually helps others that are not like me get in the industry, because that's the best I can do is learn, listen, and do what I can to take action to help.
Great. Thank you all for your answers. I'm taking notes on everything you all just said. Chris, I want to follow up on what you had said. Earlier today, I had the chance to take a quick listen to the Kings in the Making album that your organization released. One particular track, Teaching While Black, stuck out to me, especially the line, "We against all them numbers teachers been showing on our mothers, claiming we nothing but trouble, just making noise." I think that connects with the theme that you just brought up, of the current education system demonizing the self-expression of Black youth. What does your organization do to counteract that?
Wow. Well, one of the most difficult structural barriers in disrupting structural racism in public school system is Eurocentricity. The fact that as people of color, indigenous people, we learn of our culture through the English language, which there's just no translation in indigenous from indigenous the English language. And so I say that to say one extraordinary lift that we all have to lean into is rewriting curriculum from preschool through 12th grade that lifts up the cultural prosperity of Black, Brown, and API youth in language arts, in math, in science, and history. We perpetuate white supremacy and Eurocentricity when we take our first Black history class, maybe in 10th grade, or an ethnic studies class in 9th grade, necessary but far insufficient. we have to, so I would start there for us in terms of the music. And I deeply appreciate the fact, Brother Daniel, that you took the time to listen. We really are in a movement, and we also recognize the power of music as a way to bind and bring people together. And there's nothing more powerful than to have young people really curate and acculturate what the culture is, what they're going through. And so we use that music really to inform adults on what we know and what we don't know. But I say this to say that we have a lot of work to do, and we have to evolve out of what this country was based on. And that was, based on Eurocentricity, capitalistic values, this concept of me, I. We need to get back to indigenous value of we, of Ubuntu. I am because we are because I am, may the circle be unbroken. And that's lost because we don't know our Rasa studies. We don't have an understanding of Pan-Africanism, and that actually the origin of study originated in Kemet and in Africa. And to quote my sister, Dolores Huerta, we're really all Africans, right? Throughout the diaspora. And I think if we understood that, maybe we would lean into the beauty and the extraordinary brilliance of people of color and how they've influenced the sciences, language arts, and academic rigor. But in this country, you wouldn't know that because we're not taught that. But I appreciate the question, and thank you for calling on.
Yeah, great answer. That really goes to the fundamentals of our education system, and makes me even go back and question my own education. So thank you for that.
Okay, so next question, kind of going off what you were talking about, Chris, is what can our Santa Clara community do to ensure that the future leaders of tomorrow are educated on the history of systemic racism and violence? And how can we grow and not repeat what has been repeated so many times in this cycle?
I can eat that question up, but I want to defer to my brothers and sisters first, and then I can speak to the question if in the spirit of equity. Paulina, you want to jump in?
Yeah, definitely. This is something, okay, so listen up, students. This is how you're going to get to it. When I was in college, as a Latina, my father's family is from Mexico, my mom is from Uruguay, and I had this identity crisis. I didn't know who I was, what I was, growing up as a Latina with no STEM representation, nothing of, besides flipping tortillas in the house. That's all I really had. So I took Chicano studies. That came from me. And this is something that I encourage my friends. Step out of your bubble. Get new friends, meet new people, volunteer, join different clubs. You're at a university that has these wonderful opportunities. Not only that, I used to live in the Bay Area. I know Sunnyvale, Saratoga, Palo Alto, all of these communities have different organizations and clubs that you can join. And guess what? It's 2020, Gen Z, millennials, you guys are the generation of technology. You guys are the generation of innovation. You guys are the generation who are going to change the future. So you guys all need to unite, get together, talk about the new things that are coming, talk about current events, have those uncomfortable conversations, encourage each other, and help your family to get out there and vote, because this is another important conversation. And like I said, we're gonna have to have those uncomfortable conversations. I myself chose to take Chicano studies. I myself chose to incorporate my Chicano studies, my Hispanic Latino culture into my STEM, and I can combine it. Now, to each your own, you find your passion, you find what drives you, and then you share it, whether it's on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, Pinterest. There's so many different ways. Podcasts, Spotify, Apple, anything. You guys are the future, and this is a perfect opportunity. Unfortunately, with COVID, with everything that's going on, I hope you guys are all staying safe. But guess what? You're at home. You're at home. Take that to an advantage and get on your computers. You guys are way better at technology than I am, for sure. So go for it and use it to your advantage. We can all make a difference.
Yeah,
Chris.
Sorry, Chris, if you want to jump in right now, you're more than welcome to. I want to applaud.
I'm feeling Paulina, but go for it, Grant. I'll get in. I just appreciated her spirit and how she was breaking it down. Go for it.
Absolutely. That's exactly it. And I think, first of all, just everything you said, Paulina, couldn't agree more. And, I went to University of California, Berkeley, and when I was there, half of it is just immersing yourself and actually going outside of your bubble, as you said. And for me, if you looked at, and there was a time in my life, you looked at any of my social media or whatever I do, you would never know there's a different opinion out there in this world, or if there's a different culture, because you just, you find your people, the people that you're most comfortable with, or the most people that you agree with the most, et cetera. And at some point you just start adapting to each other and you just stay in this bubble. When you have the ability to get out there and to understand others, to absorb other cultures, to really, advance your mindset into ways that you're not able to do unless you do immerse yourself, like you were saying. And you did bring up voting, and voting will obviously not, let's say, not fix everything, but it is so, so important right now to just influence everybody and to educate everyone why voting matters. And I think just people saying go vote, they go, well, okay, nothing's really changed. But you can explain on which levels. We're not even have to talk about federal. We can talk about local government. That's the way you can actually affect change. And after voting, it's deeply, deeply important that we keep up the same pressures and the same protests and the same drives that we've been doing, even with officials that do not agree. You want to do it even with the ones that do agree, because that's the only way that things get done is if people are made uncomfortable. And that's half of what we need to do, is make people uncomfortable, because the minute we do, eventually being uncomfortable will become comfortable, and that's how the way of life will be.
Melissa, you want to jump in? Because I want to connect some dots, but I definitely want to allow you space.
I mean, basically everyone has said what I wanted to say, but yeah, I can't stress enough, vote, especially this year. It is so, so, so important to vote at any single level, really, that you can vote. Make your voice be heard, because that is how you create change. We don't work for the government. The government works for us. They encapsulate, they're our speakerphone kind of for our values. And so you really need to choose people who you think encapsulate your values the best. There's not always going to be a perfect candidate, but there's one that's going to kind of get you to the next stop, essentially. It gets you to the next kind of tier that we want to kind of move our communities, our country towards. So I think it's really, really important that you exercise that right if you have that right.
Excellent. So I'll sprinkle a few things. So values, I think when this crisis hit in March, in the several pandemics, not just COVID, but the acknowledgement of structural racism, let alone the financial crisis, what it revealed was our values. And so we have an opportunity, in terms of, Darren, your question around what we could do. Our organization, when the stuff hit the fan, we went to the core of what we do, and that is our kings, our children, right? And so as opposed to researchers leveraging skewed research that privileges some, but not the population we're trying to serve, we actually went to that population. And so what you could do is iterate from the margins, bring those people who you have least served, underserved, marginalized, and bring them into center. And they should drive the liberatory design process that informs from your most senior leaders to what's happening in the classroom. More often than not, the higher you go, the more distant connected you are in these institutions, and you end up driving budget, structure, ritual, routine, system, condition that actually further perpetuate those people that you might mean well, but you have no authentic long-term engagement with. So one, what you can do is continue to bring those folks that you may be struggling with, in terms of, where does the data say that that shows you who are the outliers, who are underperforming by the traditional metrics. Bring them into center. A couple of other pieces: history and her story. One, understanding the history of this nation and country and public school education, you'll begin to understand that these systems outlive all of us. And there's personal transformation we all have to go to. But if we are not, in particular our white allies, thinking about how we're leveraging our positional authority to deconstruct redesign new systems, new structures, and create conditions where the cure is in the culture, you're not going to learn that from American history. So you got to get outside of that and listen to our indigenous brothers and sisters. Study Rasa studies, study African culture and Pacific Islander culture. The other piece that, and I think it was Paulina touched on, whoever controls the narrative has the power. So we have to move from the problem of practice to the promise of practice. We understand where the needs are based on data, and we have our values, but we have to change what we're talking about. And so I say that to say that that's why for us, music is the balm that allows healing and allows us to understand who we are and whose we are. And so you all have to think very differently around the prevailing Eurocentric narrative, the hegemonic, misogynistic male narrative, and rewrite new narratives, story in different languages. I think this is a place for artists really to be curating what we lost in the language, that artists actually move in a very different tone, cadence, and vibration that actually can reveal to us the direction we need to go. And so with that being said, I definitely want to acknowledge Ruth and Nicole and Shane, Brother Ricardo, because it's these forums, right, where hopefully the people with positional authority and are controlling the budgets, which are a reflection of our value system, are listening, are using constructive listening and really listening to Daniel and Darren and what's been happening in a way to move them to move differently. And we got to move out of the white fragility to white responsibility. So there's work that our white allies have to do. And I appreciate you, Brother Grant, in terms of your journey. Yet now you have to leverage, you have an extraordinary pulpit, and that's radio, right? And I'm not actually, I don't know if it's radio or if you're on the internet or if it's television, but what an extraordinary opportunity for you to leverage that to lift up these sort of conversations. But there is no one single input. It's from the soil to the sky. And we have to think about this in terms of legacy. And I say this to say in closing, our indigenous brothers plan 7 generations before and 7 generations forward. There's a lot of knowledge if we now can think about what 7 generations previously our elders were doing. And then when we plan beyond a 3 to 5 year strategic plan, but a 7-generation plan, that's when you can sustain systemic and structural change. And so I can share more, but appreciated the question and again, the opportunity to share a few words.
Tremendous answers all around. I'm all kinds of fired up right now. That was incredible. I want to pivot a little bit and ask Melissa, why is it so important that BIPOC communities, Black, Indigenous, people of color communities get equal access to the outdoors?
Ooh, I love this question. I think everyone, first of all, deserves to feel safe in the outdoors. I don't know about anyone else who has kind of is in this community and is in this kind of conversation, has ever had their identity questioned when they are outdoors. And what I mean by that is, say, you're out doing field work, like for me. And especially when I'm out in the summer, I tan real quick. And so suddenly a young female by herself with an expensive looking backpack, with expensive looking stuff that it looks like she doesn't own that, people start questioning. People start calling the cops, being like, hey, I think something's happened here. And you suddenly have to defend yourself. You suddenly have to walk around with your student ID, showing that you are a student, that you are part of the academic community. No one should go through that crap. No one should go through that. No one should have their identity questioned. No one should have their right to be outdoors questioned, because the outdoors is for everybody. And if we really want to get into the nitty gritty of it, BIPOCs were there first. That was their home first. That was their community first. That nature, they coexisted with nature first. And so I think ripping that away from people today in age is ridiculous, especially now when we're in the middle of a pandemic and people's only solace sometimes is going out to the beach, going out to nature, either birding or looking around their trap cameras and whatnot to see what they found. Sometimes that's their own solace. And to have that be a place where they're fearful for themselves, fearful of being called on, having the cops called on them, fearful that they're going to get attacked in any ways, that just shouldn't happen. And so I think when you have communities who are standing up for these BIPOCs in these outdoor spaces, when you have weeks such as Latino Outdoors Week, when you had the rally between Black Birders Week, which absolutely took off in an amazing way, I think that's great because, again, it's that representation. It's showing that we belong in these spaces, that we have just as much of a right in these spaces as anyone else. And I think everyone should grow up with that mindset of, hey, this planet is mine just as much as it's yours. So I think it's really, really important that we see representation in the outdoors area for any BIPOCs.
That was something that was illuminating to me over the last couple of years, and especially this last year. Being a white man, I didn't, I understood where people were coming from about the fear of leaving their homes. And not knowing exactly what's going to happen to them or what danger they're in, being a Black man right now, or there's so many different situations that you can be in. And again, it had to take, the extremes, the protests, the uncomfortability that people have made, that you have to listen, right? You have to understand. And educating ourselves is by far the number one thing we can do, but it's not enough. We need to do and actually take action from there. But just really listening and and making sure other of my white friends, family, every white community understand or actually taking the time to listen. That's key, because the fears that you were saying, Melissa, and the concerns you had, a lot of white people don't really understand. They say they do, but they don't. And I think right now what we're doing is we're bringing it to light more than had been done in the past, mostly because white people didn't really listen much in the past, and they still, a big group doesn't listen now. But it's just important that we force people to listen, because it's time, and it's time to educate everybody exactly the fears and concerns that you were talking about.
Awesome. Thank you, Grant. I kind of wanted to follow up with you on that one. Let me just pull up the question. So a lot of non-Black people, such as myself, sometimes feel like we don't belong at protests or discussions about race, because, I might feel like I might get it wrong, among other reasons, right? I'm unsure if you've ever felt this way, but if you have, how have you overcome it in the past?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And I remember when these protests started, I started using my platforms, whether it be TV or social media, et cetera, to express my opinions. And there was a point where I had to ask my Black friends, and I said, listen, I'm talking a lot. I'm the one projecting my thoughts. Should I be doing that, or should I be listening more? Like what? Instead of me deciding what was good for myself, what was actually good for the cause was more important. And in this particular situation, my friends reassured me that they actually liked what I was doing. I was projecting the voices. And what it has to do a lot of times is actually using your platform to project people that aren't heard as much. And it's not sometimes listening, it's actually pushing people forward. And it was opinions. And of course, I had very strong opinions, and I let those be known. But even if it's the simple retweeting of a voice that would never have been out there, but instead that's the voice that's heard, instead of me saying, don't be racist, somebody actually giving their experience. And it's about finding your place as a white person in the cause of, convincing other white people. It's not the African-American community that we need to convince that things need to change. It's the white people that need to change, right? And so it's about finding the right way to do it. And I think, as I said before, educating is number one. And so, yes, I went to protests. I was in Oakland, walking in unity. One of the Warriors players, Juan Toscano Anderson, was putting together. And so I tried to do whatever I could with that, amplifying that information, and just trying to find my place in it without saying, like, taking it over and using it as my own cause. No, this is an everybody cause, and this is something that needs to be amplified, you know, with me, without me, whatever I can do. That's how I need to help.
Can I just say that also, that's what Grant just said is great for anyone who wants to be an ally, is using their platform to amplify those voices that otherwise we wouldn't be able to hear in our bubbles. Because it is one of those things of you being like, right, I'm not going to use the microphone right now. I'm actually going to pass the microphone on to someone else. And I think that is so, so important. Retweeting that information, sharing it on page, on your Facebook, whatever social medias you have, sharing those voices that otherwise your audience might not see is so, so, so important. And it's something that's easy to do as well, is just, I mean, really, it's you move your thumb and you just, there you go, you've retweeted it, you've shared it. And so for those people who kind of wonder, how can I be a part of the conversation without taking over it or making it kind of my narrative, definitely sharing those stories and sharing that information is crucial.
I love those points that you brought up, Melissa and Grant. I think that this is a really good conversation.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were going to say more.
I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
My bad. I lost my train of thought right there. So sorry. But thank you so much for speaking. I am going to shift the conversation a little bit to Paulina. As an environmental health and safety engineer, what can you say about the responsibility that companies have to not perpetuate the environmental racism that contributes to disproportionate health impacts on Black and Brown communities?
I love this question. So part of my senior design when I was in college is Chicano Studies and Environmental Occupational Health. Now, as an environmentalist, environmental engineer, I always say you could be the good environmentalist or you can be the bad environmentalist. It depends on how you look at it. Regardless, my job is to look at dangerous situations and make it safe. Look at different hazardous environments and make improvements, whether it's sustainability-wise, go green, however. But at the end of the day, for me personally, morally and ethically, it's the safety of you guys, the humans, the community. So if I work, let's say, for an oil gas refinery facility, which the history of that in Southern California and Los Angeles, most of those communities where you have oil refinery facilities tend to be more populated with people of color. So I'm going to give you an example like the city of Wilmington, or if you're going to go to Highland Park. These are neighborhood communities, high impact, considered, again, people of color. Why are the oil refineries going there? Why are they not in Beverly Hills? Why are they not in Orange County? Why are they not in Huntington Beach? We have the proof. We have the data. That's who I am, the scientist who is showing you the proof and the data through air quality, through air emissions, through soil leaching, through noise conservation. When we have communities that live by the freeway, that's affecting their noise, causing hearing damage and hearing loss. It's proof and shown facts that when women are pregnant and they're by these oil refinery facilities, and these are toxic fumes, toxic gas that can cause harm during pregnancy. These are all things that are written in paper. So as environmentalists, as folks who are focusing in sustainability or even in the STEM community, this is something I advocate. Try to join clubs. Try to join different organizations. There's something that always goes on. It's March for Science. This is something that I participate, which is on Earth Day. Go out there. Again, climate change is real. Look outside, Bay Area, what's going on, right? Look outside. This is our opportunity as young adults, as the next generation, to speak up, stand up, support each other, and let's make a change. As myself, I currently work in aerospace and I work here in Southern California. So working in aerospace, I try at least to make a big contribution on how can I protect my environment around us and where my facility's at. Because one of the programs in the planes that I'm working on, and I can talk about that, it's called the X-59 plane. So one of the planes, as with Lockheed and NASA, we're trying to create and generate one of the first planes that will have a soundproof sonic boom. When homes go over with a plane with a sonic boom barrier, what does it do? It's actually shaking the house, causing vibration. It's affecting your animals, and it's going to affect your hearing over time. As an environmental health safety engineer, I'm looking at all the different types of engineering aspects and environmental aspects on how can I construct this plane to make no sound. Sounds impossible, sounds crazy, but that's what I'm working on. And there's so many different factors, but all of us can do it. You don't even have to be a scientist. Get your friends involved. Again, Instagram, Facebook, we can all do it together. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'm always here to help you. With NASA and Lockheed, I'm doing my best to try to find different works to help. Yeah.
Thank you so much. That was really valuable. Thank you.
Yeah, awesome. That was a really good answer. Definitely one of the things I've been curious about in the past. As an electrical engineer, my job is to make oil irrelevant. So great answer, Paulina. Thank you. I want to ask a kind of a long question that we got from the Google form we put out. So bear with me. It says, a study conducted over the past 40 years by the University of Chicago analyzes the willingness of Americans to socialize with people outside of their race in the workplace and in universities. Since the 80s, Americans have been steadily improving their likelihood to feel comfortable spending time with and being friends with people who aren't like them. However, this trend reversed in 2013, and since that year, Americans are now becoming less likely to do so, with the most common reason being cited being perception of low racial trust. What do you think changed? This goes out to anybody.
Well, I'll take a stab at it. Some of that, it's how we have access to information. It seems if you're in those of us who have social justice mindsets tend to then be in social justice communities that then tend to inquire about social justice issues and read, and then our social media so we kind of feed and perpetuate and cultivate. Conversely, the few Republican kind of white Anglo-Saxon Protestant brothers I know, their information circles are very different than mine. And so what they have access to through television, through their network of friends and community is all, it's kind of insulated, and not to put value, but it perpetuates a particular mindset. And I feel that we've been going definitely with this president. That's just been fueled to a way now where we don't even know how to be in each other's company, because there's all these it's just fear, anxiety. I grew up in multiple neighborhoods, and I grew up in a Latino Chicano neighborhood where at one point, there was gang affiliation. So I had to connect with a group of brothers that accepted me and loved me. So I got to understand and appreciate some of, in particular, my Mexican-American brothers and the beauty of family and community. I lived in a predominantly white neighborhood. And we found affinity around rock and roll, the Niners and the Warriors and some other stuff. And we were able to find connection. I think in these last few years, there's been this perpetuation and sensationalization around division, and I don't know if I don't know. Yeah, so I'm not saying I know, but I feel that this is where the media needs to lean in very differently, and people have to. I'm into this thing. Don't call people out; you call them in, because the moment I put you on the defense, you ain't hearing me anyway. But where are those spaces? It's not even school. School can't figure it out. Universities struggle with it. So I'm like, sports is an interesting possibility, but they're still struggling with that as well. But just the access to information, I guess, is what I would share is becoming more and more skewed and limited in terms of differing in opinions.
Yeah, that's a great stab at it. If you really look at what's happening with information passed along through Facebook or otherwise, you wouldn't know what's real or fake. The phrase fake news has been thrown around too. I don't know if it fully means what it was meant to mean, but the point is that a lot of the information that people are passing along, if you look at the conspiracy theories, et cetera, is just the point of it is to separate us and to make there to be these divides that are causing people to distrust each other. And again, by being in that bubble and sharing that conspiracy theory, you're growing comfort with each other in being uncomfortable about others. And you support each other in that, and then it kind of expounds and goes from there. For me, I do wonder when something like that, and not to say that the whole nation is not experiencing systemic racism in its own ways in various forms, but when you're taking a national poll or a national, trajectory, there is a difference between, let's say, the Bay Area or, a city in Alabama, for instance. There is differences. And so I would love to see the changes in those areas. That is not to say, of course, that it does all these areas that are, let's say, liberal don't have a lot of the same issues that everywhere else does, and sometimes masked probably in a way that makes it even more hard to uncover a little bit. It's not on the surface as much, but it just would be interesting to see the diversification throughout the country.
Yeah, definitely a lot of polarization at play, causing stuff like this. Grant, you brought up the social media aspect, and you watch YouTube, you get down a rabbit hole. 2 hours later, you're looking at conspiracy theories without even having wanted to watch conspiracy theories. So great answers, y'all. Darren, you want to get the last question?
Yes, I can. So this was also from our live stream, and I lost the question. Okay, here it is. How can you assure transparency in a selection process when people of color interview for a job position, internship, among others?
So I definitely want to talk about this one, especially being as a female Latina and in aerospace and in engineering. My first time when I graduated college, it was very hard for me to get a job. As soon as I graduated college as an engineer, someone offered me a job for $15 an hour. I thought I could go work at In-N-Out. Carajo, are you serious? What is going on here? So this is what I advise to my engineering students and to anyone who's out there getting a job as a person of color. Go ahead and network. Go on your LinkedIn. Whatever job you want, whether it's Lockheed, NASA, Boeing, maybe a nonprofit organization, you can work at wherever you want. Don't let anybody stop you, but you need to network. Start meeting people, start connecting with people. Remember to be kind to everybody because you never know who you're going to come across with in the future. Kindness takes you very far. Now, also, because you are a person of color, I'm going to tell you this right now, you will experience discrimination. I myself have experienced discrimination. I actually had to leave my first job because of sexual harassment. I've had tons of stories, but that shouldn't change you, and don't let it change you. As a person of color, I want you to make an Excel spreadsheet. I want you to list all your projects. I want you to list all of your goals that you did at school, at university, all the amazing things that you can do, whether it's CAD, maybe it's MATLAB, maybe you're great at organic chemistry. List your accomplishments. So when you go to that interview, your resume should outshine itself. Your resume, whatever job you want. And if you don't get your dream job, let me tell you this right now. When I applied to Lockheed, I applied 27 times. Again, 27 times. I got told no each and every time. I always got a letter that said, we're going with the next candidate. We're going with the next candidate. We're going with the next candidate. And I didn't stop. Don't stop. Whatever job you want, you will get that job. But understand it will be a challenge. Nothing in life is easy. That's how it is. But you can get it. So list all your accomplishments. Have your professors write you a letter of recommendation. Have your friends write you a letter of recommendation, because guess what? The person sitting next to you in your class, they're going to be someone professional 5 years from now. They're going to be someone maybe working at Amgen. They're going to be someone maybe working for an oil refinery company, an electrical engineer. That's your friend. So make sure to be nice and kind to everybody and start listing your accomplishments now so you can show it during your interview process and it outshines. Your education and your mind and your knowledge is going to take you further than anything else. Don't ever forget that. That's my 2 cents.
I'm actually going to go off of Paulina's because she made some really good points. And especially with networking, don't discount social media at all. Like any social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. And I'll give you an example for that. My Twitter account, so I have about 19,000, almost 20,000 followers. When I was at 14,000 followers, going through my Twitter feed, I saw that TEDx Wellington, so a TEDx event, was asking for speakers to give ideas. So I went ahead and I was like, right, I don't think this idea is going to go through. So lesson number one, even if you don't think that you can do something, apply for it anyways, because you never know, you can surprise yourself. I ended up getting that TEDx speaker slot. That led to, and this, what I talked about was female representation on TV in regards to Shark Week and how we don't see those female shark scientists on Shark Week. That led to Discovery Channel seeing it, a Shark Week executive saying, we need to get her on a show. I've been on 2 Shark Week shows now because of it. I'm on a Nat Geo episode that's coming up in 2021, all because of social media. Not to mention also, because of social media, I found my book editor or my book agent, which led me to getting 3 books published by Scholastic this next coming year. Social media can be used more than just for showing pretty pictures. It is networking. It is getting opportunities out there that you most likely will not be able to see. And oftentimes, especially if you're in the sciences or anything like that, there is a hashtag that is involved in kind of your industry. So for science, if you're in the science industry, you type in hashtag science Twitter, there's a ton of people on there of all different backgrounds. So yeah, definitely use social media to network. It's so important, and apply for those things that you don't think you are qualified for, because you never know. You can surprise yourself, and you can be surprised in what other people see in you as well. But definitely, you tienes que tener la fe. You got to have the faith in yourself. Put yourself out there, and however many times you get no, keep standing up, because statistically speaking, one of them is going to be a yes.
So again, compliment Paulina and Melissa. But I do want us to be careful about falling into this idea of meritocracy. Yeah, we manifest our own destiny, but yet there has to be a redistribution of positional authority. There has to be a redistribution of land and resource. So we need to be intentional and apologetic for those people in positions of leadership to hire Black, to hire Brown, to hire PI. Because we even through the most extraordinary structural barriers, and Paulina and Melissa, you are living testament to what can happen with will and organization, and you got it. I get you. Yet the field is not level. So we need white folks really to let go of the wealth that was accumulated off the back of our forefathers and foremothers. That means some radical relooking at themselves and their wealth and their access with far less meritocracy than what we've had to endure. So I say this with love, yet the meritocracy piece for me, knowing my own journey and where the level of success I experienced is true, but yet overwhelmingly though, then those of us who've done exactly what you all have done, and these institutional barriers still, and if you're a woman of color, or if you're trans, LGBTQ, gender neutral, it's even more difficult. But I just want to say our leaders, our white leaders in particular, have to let go of resource and redistribute that. That would be my answer. And I would be intentional and unapologetic around, I'm not hiding or color coding. We need to hire more Black, Brown, and Pacific Islander and Asian Pacific Islander and Indigenous teachers, leaders. So yeah, and that ain't gonna happen if you take out race and I'll add that little sprinkle of tension with love though.
Great, yeah. Really good answers on both sides of the spectrum here of Well, it's not really a spectrum, you know. It's two perspectives on the same issue. So thank you for that, y'all. And thank you for such a meaningful conversation. It's time for each of you to give us your closing statement. So let's start with Melissa.
I mean, these panelists that are on here, absolutely amazing in everything that they've done, from all different walks of life. And I think it's kind of one of those testaments of, again, showing that representation matters, and that we still have a lot of work to do in our country. You know, we've gone a fair's ways ahead, but we still have a lot more work to do. You know, it's one of those things where being an ally, it's not claimed, it's bestowed, and there's no easy hack to being an ally. But we can't do this alone. You're not going to end racism by yourself, and we can do it if we work together. You know, building support, establishing networks, calling wrongs and injustices out, taking risks, and working with already established groups. I think that's the way that we're going to kind of move forward. You know, racism is very flexible and adaptable, and we need to continue to work towards it, because, you know, there will be gains and there's going to be losses in the struggle for justice and equality, but we got to keep our heads up.
Thank you, Melissa. Up next, Grant.
Yeah, I'm really honored to be part of this and to be with these panelists. You guys are you're very you're very eloquent in the way you present yourself and your opinions, and really it's easy to follow your words and to be inspired. And one thing you asked earlier is what could Santa Clara University students do? And it's to support organizations like Chris is running, or the causes that Paulina is talking about, or Melissa, her talks and listening to her. Those are things that you can do, and there's easy to do. You know, it's not something that you have to go far to be able to do. That's one good step. And we talked about voting. I mean, I cannot stress enough how important that is, and then what we do after that. And then I know this is a very side note, but one community also that I think is also is getting misrepresented in all this talks is, I think the Asian community has been dealing with a lot of a racial let's say backlash and a lot of hate, and I think they're kind of being lost in the conversations a lot of times, and not their voices aren't being amplified right now either about what's happening. And I think that's just something to note as well, that it's just everybody. There's not a race, there's not a gender, there's not somebody that's not white or male that hasn't been marginalized or had issues at some point. So it's important that we are sensitive to all that.
Thank you, Grant. Now, Paulina.
First and foremost, I just want to say thank you to everyone. Amazing panelists. All of you guys, I've learned. It's a learning opportunity for me too, to be sitting here and listening to all of you guys. Chris, what you said, I'm going to say it too, because it's something that I definitely believe in. Hire more people of color. I say this all the time. Even now working at Lockheed, I even tell my director, so the next engineer you're going to hire is going to be like a Latino, an Asian person, a Black person, right? Right? Because I'm the only one here. And sometimes I get a look. Sometimes I might get a weird face. But this goes back to speaking up, standing up, and supporting each other. It's having those uncomfortable conversations. And just as a reminder, as students, like we're all here talking about it, join those organizations, join those ways. Sorry guys, I have this little dog here. So let me put this Nino down. Find those ways on how you can help each other. I emphasize consistently on having those uncomfortable conversations. If you see someone and they say something that doesn't sound right, maybe it's microaggression, maybe it's a small form of sexism, maybe it's a small form of racism, but they turn it into a joke. It's your job to educate them and to educate yourself and to check them. It's 2020. Go out there and, like we talked about, register to vote. If you're unsure on why you should register to vote, how you can vote, what is voting, what you should vote for, ask for help. This is the opportunity and the time to ask for help. There's so many different ways. And just like Melissa said, social media. I was new to social media myself, and I don't consider myself an influencer. I just consider myself a female Latina just talking about engineering and talking about my dog. That's all I do. But you know what? I'm using my voice on things that matter to me, like this today. So once again, thank you guys all for having me, to let me listen, to let me learn, to hear your guys' stories. And I can't wait to see what the future brings. And I hope we can all work together on making a difference, a safer place as a safety engineer, a safer place for our environment, and a safer place for all of us when we walk outside, number one. So thank you guys.
Thank you, Paulina. And lastly, we have Chris.
Paulina, you are an influencer. So I would add that into your repertoire of verbal description of your essence. Just honored, humbled to be in your presence. A few things. One, the Calvary is not coming to save us. We are planting seeds that will become trees that will provide shade for children we haven't even envisioned. So we have to take the E out of our ego so we can go forward. If we understand our history and who we are and whose we are, we'll get through this. And so just, man, I am encouraged. Young people give me excitement and joy and permission to believe that we're headed in the right direction. And it may get a little worse, which you need tension to grow. You need consternation and friction, but we must nest that in a healing frame. And I think that's our challenge, y'all. We got to be exactly who we are, knowing we are all on a journey of personal transformation as we collectively transform this country. But if we don't know how to be in our pain and in our trauma, the moment you done said something and spoke your truth, or I done spoke my bias, then we're ready to fight. And we don't need that. We need to love on each other, and we need to hug up on each other, and we need to listen and understand where that pain comes from. And that comes through just the grace of listening, of spaces like what you all just curated here, where we can bring in different thoughts, different opinions. No one's better than the other, but it's all grooming and growing. So I applaud the folks that pulled this together, and honored to be in the presence of my colleagues on the panel, and anyway, the Kingmakers of Oakland, or my family. I have 3 sons in the movement. My wife is the executive director of the National Equity Project. So let me just share that I'm bringing my family, my grandma, my grandpa, like we in it, y'all. So I just appreciate all of you, and just wish you all continued success.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you, everybody. Yeah, I'm feeling tingly. I'm just so grateful that you all gave us all your perspectives. I want to thank you for making the time today from your busy schedules to join us from all around, for sharing your stories, and helping us further the conversation on such important issues during such an important time in our history.
Also, thank you so much to the students from SCU and everyone across the world for tuning in. This event has been recorded and will be posted up on our website, which, if you guys don't know, is www.scu.edu/engineering/diversity/council.
Thanks, Darren. Quick plug for the next panel. Please mark your calendars and join again on Thursday, October 8th at 6 p.m. Pacific time for our next panel discussion, featuring multilingual author of What Are We Gonna Do Today in the Amazing World of STEM, co-founder of the Raising Superman Project and the League of Extraordinary Parents, SCU alum Naeem Bendil. Fellow SCU alum, current PhD candidate at Carnegie Mellon University, who develops and supports initiatives for underrepresented students, Uche Agwu. Outreach coordinator and Speakers Bureau coordinator at the LGBTQ Youth Space in San Jose, California, Frank Pena, and some more to be announced later. Please help spread the word and be on the lookout for promotional materials coming out soon on social media.
And then a reminder for all of our SCU students on the call or watching in the live stream, if you're interested in speaking more with our panelists, please remember to join us on Zoom shortly after the conclusion for our event with our special Talk After the Walk event with our panelists. The Zoom link was shared to your SCU email by the great Ricardo Padilla Jr.
Yeah, and to the general public watching on live stream, I want to leave you with this. There is a long history of oppression, racism, brutality, white supremacy, as Chris brought up, Eurocentricity in this nation and in the world. However, there are steps we can all take to moving forward to turn our words and thoughts into action and to rid our society of these practices and attitudes. May we all leave here today with more tools to turn our thoughts, our words into meaningful action and to build up our community. We also want to quickly mention some of the takeaways from this talk, such as eliminating Eurocentricity in education. Melissa brought up, you can't be what you can't see. Darren, you wanna sound off a few?
Yeah, of course. There are so many. This is such a great talk. Okay, some things that really resonated with me were also the importance of amplifying the voices of people that may not regularly be heard, as honestly all the panelists mentioned, but specifically, yeah, I thought that was a really important topic. And then also I loved how Chris mentioned Ubuntu, which is I am because we are. That's like a key thing in our Pan-African Club on campus, so I thought that was really cool. But there are some really good takeaways from here. And so I'm going to leave you all with a quote from an Instagram account on campus, or on Instagram. It's an Instagram account. It's called Being Black at SCU, and it's just a space for our students to share their experiences and for us to amplify their voices. The quote is, "Start holding your peers accountable and don't be afraid to speak your truth." So I will see you all on October 8th, and good night.